could you talk about sort of, I imagine it's the same with actual people who aren't hetero males in such a masculine space as police force detectives. What was that like being, surrounded by that masculine energy, but being this distinct character?
I yeah, I mean, I think that, it's kind of interesting sometimes also just like in that being the only woman on set, although I did feel like everybody did take me seriously and you know, but but yeah, I think to be kind of a female detective and to be in that hyper masculine world is an interesting thing. And I did speak to somebody who had that experience to kind of see what that was like, and she said it was really tough. And it's almost like, for me, it was important to feel like, my character had to work that much harder and had to be that much tougher. And it was funny because I've never played a role like this, and I was like, was anybody gonna take me seriously as this character? But I also realized that's kind of probably how my character felt showing up for work every day, you know?
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. It fits. And Mel Gibson is great here. He's always like at his best when he's having fun,
Mhm.
and he's deceptive in a way. But that first scene with him when you're in the car is delightful. What was it like playing off of him, and how did he sort of fit into what you were just talking about?
I mean, yeah, that was actually our first day on set, all of us, and that was a funny scene because he was definitely he was ad-libbing a ton, so it was just always fun to hear what he was going to come up with next. And I do think that he was definitely having fun with the role, so that was it was fun to watch for sure and interact with.
Yeah. And you're I don't know if you've already filmed it, but you worked with him again either before or right after this in Boys of Summer, is that right?
Yeah, it's we both were in that film, which is now, I believe, called Monster Summer. I think they're announcing it next week because it's going to come out in October. But it's shot in North Carolina, and our storylines were like both kind of condensed in separate areas of the film. So we never actually worked together or met until we did this film. And I was
Okay,
like,
I
we were in
see.
a movie together. We haven't met, but we were in a movie together.
Well, are you is your aspect of that with Mason Thames' character, or is it
Yeah, it's Mason. I play Mason's mom.
okay, okay, I
And I own
apologize.
a little kind of bed and breakfast situation, and so some of the characters involved are staying there, and it's a really sweet kind of coming of age tale. So yeah.
And that sort of seems like another, I mean, to a degree, another sort of different role for you, in a way, either as a mom or in this fantasy world. Could you talk about that a bit?
Yeah, it is a weird thing when you hit a certain age as a woman that you're suddenly kind of just being sent moms or wives. I mean, that's why it was quite nice to um, be sent Detective Young and to have somebody whose agency is not. I mean, it's nice and important to play moms and all of those things because those relationships are important. But I it was kind of jarring to me because for so long people wouldn't let me even play the mother of like a 3-year-old or something, and then suddenly I had like this son who was supposed to be 13, and I was like, what is happening? I don't even understand. But it was fun. It was definitely a different experience. So it's been fun to play these different roles and to kind of learn, as I go along, stumble through it basically.
Yeah, well, I mean, it looks like a year has passed for you with Brick. It's like 200 pounds have passed for me since Brick. It's wild. Do you feel like there are these gatekeepers who like you? I mean, I love your work, but I feel like there's this whole pocket of cinema that should be embracing you. Do you feel like there have been gatekeepers in a way that have said, well, you're not a mom, but you're not this or whatever?
Yeah, Yeah, I had a really hard time in my 30s. I'm 43 now. But in my 30s I had a hard time because I still looked so young, but they knew I wasn't young. So I was just sort of like drifting out on an island by myself. Do you know what I mean? And then it also has to do with like who you're working with. I'm really happy with who I'm working with now, but you know, whether they're getting you the opportunities for the things that you want to be able to do.
Yeah, and I guess, I mean, it's just about 20 years since Brick, and that was such a complicated femme fatale, but also sort of the satirical thing. It was a perfect performance. Do you have any memories? I mean, working on set before uh these people went on to do Star Wars and these giant things. What was that production like, if you don't mind sharing?
Oh, it was great. It was so fun. I mean, Ryan, you know, he was so young then, but he was so confident. He really knew what he wanted. And Steve Yedlin, the cinematographer, like obviously that was the beginning of a great relationship for them because he shoots all his films now. And I remember he like made his own lights for it. When he couldn't quite find the perfect one. I think the cinematography is so stunning in that movie. But it was just fun. Like I just felt like we were all at camp together and we were all just making this weird little movie and it felt really special at the time. And I think that it's interesting when you have that experience and then it still and it comes across, you know.
Yeah, when it definitely translates. Yeah, it felt like lightning in a bottle. Boneyard is grim with these themes, but it's great to see these different threads come together, these different tortured souls. What do you hope people sort of get from it, or what do you anticipate they will get from it?
Well, I think you know, it shines a light on these true crime stories. And I mean, this one was kind of loosely inspired by the West Mesa murders, which remain unsolved to this day, which was 12 women were, they found the remains of 12 women. We don't know how many more might have been killed. And they were primarily all, I think there was maybe the exception of one that were all sex workers. And so people didn't even really notice they went missing at first. And I think that's really sad. And I think it's really important to make sure people aren't dehumanizing them just because of where they wound up in life. And you know, it was already a challenging path, and it's just really sad when somebody preys on vulnerable women like that, and there maybe isn't as much impetus to find the killer because you know it's a segment of the population that people aren't as concerned with for whatever reason.
Yeah, I remember that heartbreaking documentary, Tales of the Grim Sleeper, where it was a similar thing, but in LA, I guess, with sex workers and especially, Black or Spanish women and uh, just interviewing police there. Yeah, it was just tragic seeing how little care there was. But uh, in your prep for this, what did you sort of, I guess, final question. I don't want to take too much of your time. I apologize. But
Oh, I'm enjoying
uh,
sharing.
in your prep for this, you mentioned discussing this with, I guess, a female officer. What did you sort of learn about policing or that field of work that maybe surprised you or influenced you the most here?
I think she just said it was tough for her and she had to work that much harder and be that much more perfect, you know, every day and show up in that way and still had to sort of deal with people constantly pointing out that she was a woman or making her feel different or less than and how tough that was. And she wasn't doing it any longer. She was driving for a car company and she said she preferred it. But I think, you know, I think it's a really, really, really tough job. And I think that, you know, it can be very rewarding, but I think it's a tough job. And I think that my character, you know, takes it very seriously and cares very much. So
It seems like you could relate to that in your own field of work in many ways.
right. Yeah, it's very true.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't wait for people to see the film, and I hope you have a great rest of your week.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks. Bye.